I'm not quite sure how to start this, but my story is a whirlwind of emotions, betrayal, and ultimately revenge. I was married to Lisa for 6 years. At first, it was everything I had hoped for: love, laughter, and a shared vision for the future. We had built a life together in a cozy little house in Denver with our dog Max, who was basically our fur child. We were the perfect couple, or so I thought. But over the past year, things began to change. Lisa, who used to be all about cozy nights in with Netflix and takeout, suddenly became obsessed with fitness. I guess there's nothing wrong with wanting to be fit, but this was different. She started spending more time at the gym, raving about her spin class instructor, Ryan. "He's so motivating," she would say. "He just gets me." At first, I encouraged her, thinking it was great she found something she was passionate about. But as the months went by, I noticed subtle changes. Lisa was more distant, often coming home late or skipping our dinner plans to go to extra spin classes. There were whispers of new friends and late-night work meetings that didn't quite add up. I brushed it off, convincing myself I was just being paranoid. After all, she had always been fiercely independent, and I didn't want to be that controlling husband. Then came the moment that shattered my world. One evening, I decided to surprise her by picking her up after one of those spin classes. I arrived early and waited in my car, convinced I'd catch her with a sweaty grin as she emerged, ready for a night of fun together. Instead, I saw her walking out of the gym, laughing and flirting with Ryan, her spin instructor. They were clearly comfortable with each other, sharing jokes that I could only assume were inappropriate. My heart sank as I watched them exchange a lingering hug before she got into her car. I couldn't believe my eyes. The pit in my stomach grew as I replayed the moments in my head. Every late night, every excuse she had made, all started to click together. I had caught her red-handed, and I felt like a complete fool. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel, conflicted between confronting her right then and there or waiting for the right moment. I knew I needed proof before confronting her, so I decided to follow her home. That night was unbearable. I found myself pacing around our living room, the silence heavy with doubt. When she finally came home, I was ready. I confronted her about what I had seen, anticipating a panicked response or at least some sort of guilt. Instead, she laughed it off. "Oh, please, it's just a workout. You're being ridiculous," she said, rolling her eyes at me. I felt like I had been slapped in the face. I pressed on, my voice trembling with hurt as I described what I witnessed. But Lisa was unfazed. She insisted I was being paranoid and accused me of not trusting her. That night, we argued until the early hours of the morning. Every lie she told, every excuse she made only cut deeper. I felt like I was losing her, and at that moment I realized that the woman I loved was gone, replaced by this callous stranger. The emotional roller coaster was exhausting, leaving me angry, confused, and heartbroken all at once. Eventually, after what felt like an eternity, I decided enough was enough. I was no longer going to be the fool in this situation. In my mind, I began crafting the perfect plan. I would not only confront her, but I'd make sure Ryan paid for what he had done too. I could already see the pieces falling into place. My life would not remain a passive casualty of Lisa's betrayal. I was going to take control. I'll tell you more about my plan in the next part, but for now, I want to share the emotional toll this had taken on me. It's one thing to lose trust in someone you love, but to feel completely blindsided is devastating. I want others in similar situations to know they aren't alone. If you see the signs, don't ignore them, just like I did. After that fateful confrontation with Lisa, I felt like my world was crumbling. The feelings of betrayal and hurt were overwhelming, and I spent countless hours replaying every moment in my head. I was angry, no, furious. I had trusted her implicitly, only to find out that she was spending her time rolling around with Ryan, the spin class instructor. The thought of it made my blood boil. The next few days were a blur. I went to work, but my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't concentrate on anything. I kept picturing Lisa and Ryan together, laughing and flirting, while I was sitting at home waiting for her to come back to me. I started to notice the little things that had slipped by me before: her perfume that smelled different, the way she would smile at her phone, and the secretive texts that would light up her face. They were all signs I had chosen to ignore because I wanted to believe our love was strong enough to endure anything. But deep down, I knew I had to act. I wasn't going to let this go unpunished. I had seen how close they were, and now I was determined to make Ryan pay for stepping into my marriage. I devised a plan to not only confront Lisa, but to also expose Ryan for the fraud he was. I started with some basic research. Lisa had told me all about her spin class and the little community that surrounded it. I never paid much attention before. It was just her hobby after all. But now, I saw it as a way to gather intel. I managed to find out when Lisa would be attending her spin classes. I began to show up at the gym during her scheduled times, pretending it was out of curiosity. I observed the interactions between her and Ryan. It was infuriating to see the way she lit up around him, while I had barely registered on her emotional radar anymore. However, my plan was not just about watching. I needed to get to know Ryan to understand what kind of person he was. I struck up conversations with some of the other instructors and gym goers. I learned that Ryan had been a fitness instructor for years, and he thrived on attention. He had a reputation for charming women, and it was clear he enjoyed the power he wielded over them, especially over my wife. One day, after a particularly intense spin class, I introduced myself. "Hey, I'm Mark, Lisa's husband," I said with a forced smile. Ryan looked at me with a flicker of surprise, but he quickly covered it up. "Oh, great to meet you. Lisa is such a dedicated member. You must be proud," he said gleefully, like he had no idea what was really going on. I played it cool, acting as if I had no clue about their affair, while inside I was boiling. The real breakthrough came when I discreetly talked to other members who had been attending the same classes as Lisa. I found out that Ryan often organized post-class gatherings at a nearby bar. It was the perfect opportunity to expose him. I made it clear to a few of the regulars that I was considering joining them, and that they should give me a heads up about any future meetups. As I prepared for my revenge, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nervousness. I was stepping into dangerous territory, but I was determined to bring Ryan down. I started collecting evidence: texts from Lisa's phone that I found when she left it unattended, conversations I overheard at the gym, and even some photos I took of them together when they thought no one was watching. Each piece of evidence strengthened my resolve. I dedicated myself to the plan, imagining the moment I would confront both of them. I wanted to see the look on Lisa's face when she realized I had pieced everything together. More than that, I wanted Ryan to feel the consequences of his actions. He had invaded my life, and I was going to make sure he paid for it. But as I prepared for the confrontation, I couldn't shake off the emotional toll it was taking on me. I had never imagined that my marriage would take such a turn. I had trusted Lisa with everything, and now the foundation of our relationship felt like it was built on sand. I felt lost and broken, but I also felt a flicker of hope. I was taking back control of my life, and I wasn't going to allow anyone to trample on my happiness anymore. I'll share how I executed my plan and the fallout that followed in the next part. It's a wild ride, and the consequences were far-reaching. The night of confrontation was finally upon me, and I felt a whirlwind of emotions: nervousness, anger, and a sense of grim satisfaction. I had been planning this for weeks, and now it was time to put my plan into action. I needed both Lisa and Ryan to see the consequences of their betrayal. I had gathered enough evidence to confront them, and I was ready to unleash it all. I decided to confront them at the bar where Ryan often met with the spin class regulars after workouts. It was a place Lisa frequently visited, and I knew she would be there after her evening class. I arrived early, my heart pounding in my chest. I took a seat at the bar, casually sipping a drink while I waited for them to show up. The atmosphere was lively, with loud music and laughter, but all I could focus on was the impending confrontation. When Lisa walked in, she was radiant, seemingly unaffected by the chaos building in my mind. She wore a tight-fitting workout top and leggings that accentuated her figure, and I could see Ryan beside her, flashing that insufferable grin. They were like two magnets, drawn together in a way that made my blood boil. I watched them as they laughed and joked, completely oblivious to my presence. The moment arrived when they settled at a table close enough for me to overhear their conversation. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I realized I was about to break the illusion they had created. No more hiding. No more. Pretending, I stood up and walked over, my heart racing as I approached their table. "Lisa," I said, trying to suppress the tremor in my voice, "can we talk now?" Her expression shifted from surprise to confusion, then to annoyance. "What are you doing here, Mark?" she asked, her voice dripping with irritation. Ryan looked between us, his demeanor faltering as he took in the tension. I didn't waste a moment. "I think you know exactly why I'm here. Or should I remind you how close you've gotten to your spin instructor?" I leveled my gaze at Ryan, whose casual demeanor faded, replaced by uncertainty. "Ryan, right? I have some things to discuss with you too." Lisa opened her mouth, ready to make an excuse, but I cut her off. I pulled out my phone and showed her the texts I had found, the photos of them together, the evidence that proved everything. "This is what you've been hiding from me. Don't even try to deny it." The color drained from Lisa's face as she scanned the screen. "Mark, she stammered, but I wasn't interested in her excuses. I turned to Ryan, who was now squirming in his chair. "I know you think it's all fun and games, but you've crossed a line. You're not just a spin instructor, you're a homewrecker. You think you can just flirt with someone else's wife and get away with it." My voice was steady, but inside I was consumed with rage. Ryan opened his mouth to defend himself, but I wasn't having it. "You need to get your act together before this spirals out of control. I'm sure Lisa's not the first woman you've charmed with that smile." I watched as Ryan's bravado crumbled, revealing a hint of fear in his eyes. Lisa, realizing the gravity of the situation, finally gave in. "I'm sorry, Mark. I didn't mean for it to happen. It was just a fling. I swear it didn't mean anything," she pleaded, her voice trembling. I couldn't believe how casual she was about it. "A fling? You thought screwing around with your instructor was just a fling? You've been lying to me for months." I could feel the anger bubbling up again, but I forced myself to stay calm. "You have no idea how much you've hurt me, how much you've hurt us. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a choice." I watched as the reality of her actions finally settled in. Her eyes filled with tears, but they did nothing to soften my heart. I was tired of her lies and excuses. I had trusted her with everything, and now I was left with nothing but betrayal. As the confrontation unfolded, the bar continued buzzing around us, yet it felt like we were in our own separate world. The patrons were oblivious to the drama unfolding at the table, but I didn't care. I had to let it all out. "I deserve better than this, Lisa. Better than being deceived and disrespected." Finally, I turned to Ryan one last time. "You may have taken her for now, but I'll make sure you regret it. I'll expose you for who you really are. No one deserves to have their relationships destroyed by a scumbag like you." With that, I walked away, leaving them both in shock. I felt a strange mix of triumph and despair. I had confronted them, and in doing so, I had reclaimed a piece of my dignity. But the damage had been done, and I knew things would never be the same. As I drove home, the adrenaline began to fade, replaced by the reality of the situation. I was heartbroken, but somewhere within the pain, I felt a strange sense of relief. I had taken a stand, and I wasn't going to let either of them dictate how my life would unfold. The road ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to face it. I had a plan in mind, not just for my own healing, but also for making Ryan pay for what he did. The next steps were crucial, and I was determined to make sure they had consequences. In the next part, I'll dive into the fallout from the confrontation and how I executed the next phase of my plan. It's about to get even more intense. The days following my confrontation with Lisa and Ryan felt surreal. I had expected a whirlwind of emotions afterward, but instead, I found myself in a strange state of calm. I hadn't resolved my feelings about Lisa, far from it, but I had finally taken a stand. I had confronted the betrayal head-on, and that act alone was liberating. Still, I knew that the fallout from that night was just beginning. Lisa tried to reach out to me after our explosive encounter, but I wasn't ready to talk. I wasn't interested in her apologies or excuses. Instead, I focused on my plan to make Ryan pay for his role in this mess. I started gathering evidence to confront not just him, but the spin studio as well. I knew Ryan had a reputation among the gym-goers, but I also learned that he was a certified instructor who had built a following based on charm and charisma. I began to talk to some of the women who attended his classes, discreetly asking them about their experiences with him. It turned out many of them were aware of his flirty nature, and several had felt uncomfortable with his advances. I wasn't alone in my anger. There were other women who felt like Ryan had crossed lines that should never be crossed. With the information I gathered, I decided to take it a step further. I reached out to the management of the spin studio, detailing my experiences and the stories I had collected from other members. I crafted a message that outlined how Ryan's behavior was inappropriate and created a toxic environment for many women. I included evidence of his interactions with Lisa, painting a clear picture of how his actions went beyond just casual flirting. I had proof he was not only unprofessional but a threat to the integrity of their business. As I pressed send on that email, I felt a surge of satisfaction. I was taking control of the narrative. I wasn't just going to let Ryan skate away unscathed while my life fell apart. I wanted to ensure he faced the repercussions of his actions, and I was determined to make it happen. Meanwhile, Lisa continued to reach out, leaving me several texts and voicemails. She pleaded for another chance, saying she was willing to work on our marriage. "Mark, I made a mistake. I know I hurt you, but I love you. Please let's talk." She would write, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. How could I trust her again after what she had done? My heart was still heavy with betrayal, and I needed time to process everything. The final straw came a few days later when I received a response from the Spin Studios management. They thanked me for bringing the situation to their attention and assured me they would thoroughly investigate the matter. I felt a wave of satisfaction wash over me, knowing that my actions were making a difference. Ryan would face consequences for his behavior, and as far as I was concerned, it was long overdue. However, as the days turned into weeks, I began to feel the emotional toll this was taking on me. I was still grappling with the reality of the betrayal, and despite my efforts to move on, I found myself haunted by memories of happier times with Lisa. I missed the laughter, the inside jokes, and the plans we had made for our future together. It was painful to confront the fact that the woman I loved had shattered my trust and turned our marriage into a battlefield. I finally decided to respond to Lisa's numerous messages. I sent her a concise text, outlining my feelings. "I need time, Lisa. You've hurt me deeply, and I can't just turn that off because you say you love me. I'm still processing everything." The response was immediate. She called me, frantic and emotional. I could hear her sobbing on the other end of the line. "Please, Mark, I can't lose you. I'll do anything. Just talk to me." But the more she begged, the more resolute I became. I knew I had to protect myself. I couldn't allow her to manipulate my feelings. I had to stand firm, not just for my sake, but for the sake of our relationship. If we were going to rebuild, it had to be on a foundation of honesty, and right now, I didn't trust her at all. As I navigated this emotional minefield, I found solace in my friends, who rallied around me with support. They listened to my pain and frustration, reminding me I deserved better. Their encouragement helped me realize I needed to prioritize my own well-being before making any decisions about my future with Lisa. Then came the moment I had been waiting for, news from the Spin Studio. They contacted me to let me know that Ryan had been suspended pending an investigation. Their quick action was a huge relief, and I felt a sense of justice. This was the confirmation I needed that my actions had consequences, and it felt empowering to be part of that. But while I reveled in my small victory, I knew that the road to healing wasn't going to be a straight one. My feelings towards Lisa were complicated. I still loved her, but I was also filled with anger and resentment. I needed to figure out what I truly wanted. Did I want to try and repair our marriage, or was it time to move on? In the next part, I'll delve into the aftermath of the confrontation and how I began to heal from the betrayal. It's a journey filled with self-reflection and discovering what I really want out of life and relationships. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions following the fallout from my confrontation with Lisa and Ryan. I was still processing the betrayal, grappling with the complexities of my feelings toward my wife, while also trying to take control of my own life. Ryan's suspension from the spin studio felt like a small victory, but it didn't erase the pain that had settled in my heart. During this time, I began to focus on myself more. I started going to the gym, ironically, the same one, where Lisa had once spent hours spinning her heart out. I needed to reclaim that space to take back my sense of power and purpose. It was a liberating experience. With every workout, I felt a little stronger, both physically and emotionally. The endorphins helped lift the heavy fog that had settled over my life. I also made it a point to connect with friends I had neglected over the past few years. They were supportive and encouraging, reminding me of my worth. We went out for drinks, hit the hiking trails, and even had game nights. It was refreshing to be reminded of life outside of my troubled marriage. I laughed, I talked, and for the first time in a while I felt like myself again. But Lisa wasn't done trying to reach me. She continued to send texts, each one more desperate than the last. "I miss you," she'd write. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this." Part of me felt guilty for not responding, but I couldn't afford to waver. I needed to focus on my healing journey and not get dragged back into the emotional chaos that had become our life. One evening, after a long workout, I returned home to find Lisa waiting for me. She had let herself in, and I felt a surge of panic. Her eyes were red from crying, and she looked unkempt, as if she had been waiting there for hours. "Please, Mark, we need to talk," she said, her voice shaky. "What's there to talk about, Lisa?" I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "You made your choices, and I'm still trying to process the consequences of those choices. Just give me a chance to explain," she pleaded, taking a step closer. "I know I messed up, but I've been doing a lot of thinking. It was a stupid mistake, and I can't live with myself knowing I hurt you like this." I felt my defenses rising. "A mistake? You call betraying our marriage a mistake? This isn't just about you and Ryan, this is about us, and you shattered that trust." I know," she cried, desperation creeping into her voice. "But I want to make it right. I want to prove to you that I can change. I'm going to therapy, and I want us to go to couples counseling. I want to fight for our marriage, Mark." Her words hung heavy in the air, and I felt a part of me softening. The woman standing in front of me was still the one I had loved, but there was also a stranger there, someone who had betrayed me in the worst way possible. "Lisa, I just don't know if I can trust you again," I said, trying to keep my emotions in check. "You need to understand that this isn't something I can just forgive overnight." "I understand," she said, tears streaming down her face. "But please give me a chance to show you that I can be better. We can work through this together." As she spoke, I felt a wave of conflicting emotions wash over me. Part of me wanted to believe her, to hope that we could find our way back to each other. But another part of me reminded me of the hurt, the betrayal, and the reality of what she had done. I needed time to think, to process everything, not just for her sake, but for my own. "I can't promise anything, Lisa," I said finally. "I'm not ready to say yes to couples counseling. I need to figure out what I want first. This isn't about just you anymore, it's about me too." Her shoulders slumped, and I could see the hurt in her eyes, but I stood firm. I needed to prioritize my feelings, my healing. I watched her leave that night, a mix of sadness and relief washing over me. In the days that followed, I continued to focus on myself. I spent more time with friends and engaged in activities I enjoyed. I picked up hobbies I had let slide while I was focused on my marriage. I found refuge in my old guitar, strumming away the stress and anxiety that had built up in my chest. Music became my escape, a way to express my emotions without having to vocalize them. Simultaneously, I began to consider what I truly wanted out of life and my relationships. Did I want to work it out with Lisa, or was it time to cut my losses and move on? I knew that if I wanted to rebuild, it would take a significant amount of effort from both of us, and I wasn't sure Lisa was ready for that. I had to prioritize my own well-being before making any decisions about our future. Then, out of the blue, I received an unexpected call from the Spin Studios management. They informed me that Ryan had been let go following the investigation. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and discomfort. While I was glad to see that justice had been served, part of me felt a pang of guilt knowing that I had played a role in someone losing their job. But then I remembered the pain he had caused me and how he had crossed boundaries that should never have been breached. In the end, I knew I had done the right thing. As I processed this new information, I realized that I was beginning to find clarity. I wanted to feel empowered to take charge of my own life. I was no longer willing to let the actions of others dictate my happiness. I was ready to move forward, whether that meant rebuilding my marriage with Lisa or taking a different path entirely. In the next part, I'll dive into the final decision I made regarding my marriage and how I ultimately chose to move on. It's a culmination of everything I've been through, and it's a chance to reflect on the lessons I've learned. As I sat down to reflect on everything that had happened, I felt a mix of emotions swirling inside me: relief, sadness, and a newfound strength. The turmoil of the past few months had shaken me to my core, but it also forced me to confront what I truly wanted. I had spent weeks in limbo, caught between the remnants of my marriage and the desire to reclaim my own identity. After the news of Ryan's termination, Lisa reached out again, and this time she was more persistent. She wanted to meet and talk things over, to have a real conversation about the state of our relationship. I was torn. Part of me wanted to hear her out, to see if there was a glimmer of hope left in our marriage. But the other part, stronger and more resolute, reminded me of the hurt I had endured and the trust that had been shattered. I finally agreed to meet her at a cafe we used to frequent. The moment I saw her walk in, I felt a rush of memories flood back: happy times, laughter, and shared dreams. But those memories were now tainted by the betrayal that had followed. I took a deep breath as she approached, her expression a mix of hope and anxiety. "Thank you for meeting me," she said softly, her voice carrying an edge of vulnerability. I nodded, unsure of what to say. "Mark, I know I messed up. I've been doing a lot of soul-searching since everything happened. I've realized how much I took for granted and how I allowed my insecurities to dictate my actions," she began, her eyes earnest. "I want to make things right. I want to earn back your trust, even if it takes time." I listened patiently as she spoke, but I found it hard to let the warmth of her words seep through the walls I had built around my heart. "Lisa, I appreciate you being honest, but I need you to understand something," I said, finding my voice. "Trust isn't something that can be rebuilt overnight. It takes time, consistency, and genuine effort. I need to know that you're fully committed to this, not just because you feel guilty." "I understand," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm committed to making things better. I'm going to therapy and I want to go to couples counseling. I know it won't be easy, but I'm willing to fight for you and for us." Her sincerity was palpable, and for a moment I felt the flicker of hope that I had been searching for. But as I looked into her eyes, I couldn't help but remember the hurt, the lies, and the deep sense of betrayal. "I need time too, Lisa. I need to figure out if I can ever trust you again, if I can forgive you." An uncomfortable silence hung between us, filled with unspoken words. Lisa nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I understand. I'll give you all the time you need." I left the cafe that day with a heavy heart. It was clear Lisa wanted to make amends, but I knew I had to protect myself first. I had come too far in my healing journey to allow myself to be swept back into the chaos of our relationship without careful consideration. Over the next few weeks, I immersed myself in self-discovery. I continued working out, spending time with friends, and even started journaling to process my emotions. I took the time to think about what I wanted for my future, and with each passing day, I realized that my priorities were shifting. I was reclaiming my life, and it felt good. Eventually, I made my decision. I called Lisa and asked her to meet me again. This time, I was ready to share what I had been contemplating. When we sat down, I saw the apprehension in her eyes. "Mark, what's going on?" she asked. "Lisa, I've spent a lot of time reflecting on our marriage and what's happened. The truth is, I don't think I can move forward with you," I said, my voice steady but filled with sadness. "What you did changed everything, and while I appreciate your willingness to work on yourself, I don't think I can trust you again. I need to focus on my own healing and growth right now." Her face fell and the hurt was evident. You don't mean that. We can work through this. I'll do anything, Mark. I love you. I know you love me, but love alone is enough to rebuild what's been broken. I need to prioritize my own well-being. I replied, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders as I said the words. It's time for both of us to move on. The tears streamed down her face, and as much as it pained me to see her hurt, I knew I had made the right choice. I had taken my power back, and I felt an overwhelming sense of clarity and freedom. As I walked away from our last conversation, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. I had lost a chapter of my life, but I was ready to write a new one. I realized that the journey of healing would take time, but I was committed to rediscovering my passions, pursuing my goals, and ultimately finding happiness again. In the end, I had learned valuable lessons about trust, self-worth, and the importance of prioritizing my own happiness. I knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but I was finally ready to embrace whatever came next. Life was too precious to spend it in the shadows of betrayal, and I was determined to step into the light once more.